Hello, everybody. This is a new episode of Translating Love with me, Woifi.
And me, Dani. But is it really a new episode?
It's
not a repeat. We're not
an
just
old
word
episode.
for word repeating an
It's
episode.
an old episode of Translating Love, and we are talking about stuff we talked about already. So strap in and listen again. No, it's a new episode. And today we have a guest on.
We do have a guest on, so we're going to keep this part short and not ramble for 10 minutes like we usually do.
Right. But we also had the first snowfall.
We did have
this
the
week.
first snowfall.
And it was pretty cool. Now it's gone again due
It's not totally gone.
global
but it's
warming.
Partly gone.
But it was nice. We had snow for 3 days.
We did. It was very lovely.
Which kind of helped the Christmas spirit come up a little bit.
Oh, totally. I made a little tiny mini snowman and I played with the dog in the snow and we had some fun.
And you made Christmas slippers.
I started making Christmas slippers. That's true.
Yeah. And you hung Christmas lights.
I did hang Christmas lights. That's one of my favorite things at Christmas time is to hang Christmas lights.
Yeah.
Not like on a tree. I mean, that's nice too, but just like around one of the rooms. Yeah. And it's just, I could stare at them for hours in the dark with the lights on. Oh, it's the best.
Yeah. Wow. What happened there to my voice? Yeah.
Life is going through puberty.
Danielle, no, I'm reverse puberty.
You're Benjamin Button.
I'm Benjamin Button
right
yeah.
now.
I'm going back into puberty and then into my kid's voice. So soon you hear me talking like this. Hello, this is Woifi. And this is my podcast. And today we're talking about the bullies in schools.
Okay, but we're going into the thing where we're rambling too long.
Right. No, but today we have a guest. Shannon Crossland is her name, and she's from England, and she's a big...
Also, Shannon, I'm so sorry if you listen to any of the other episodes where Woifi is doing his English accent. It is atrocious, and I'm terribly sorry.
It is. It's. I wish I could do one because I would love to do one, but I can't. But yeah, other than that, she's a big advocate for limb difference, and she will explain it herself.
So let's give her a call.
So today we have a special guest. Shannon is with us here. She is a big voice for people with limb differences on Instagram, and we are super happy to have you, Shannon.
Hello, great to be on. Thank you for asking me to join you guys.
Thank you that you take your time to speak with us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Well, being here.
Yeah, right.
In person, but...
over Skype. So... a couple of weeks ago, I noticed your Instagram page and I followed you because I myself have a limb difference due to an accident. And I just loved how you used that platform in such a positive, in such a honest way, because that's something that is not usually the way on Instagram. It's usually like a little different or the opposite almost. So the first question or the first thing we wanted to ask you is, who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing currently in your life? And also, I mean, with all the pandemic stuff is going on, how are you holding up with this stuff that's going on right now in the world?
Yeah, so my name's Shannon. I am an advocate on social media for limb difference and for sort of spreading a positive message regarding body image and accepting who you are. I'm from the UK, as you can probably tell by my accent. I'm sort of in the north of the UK from a place called West Yorkshire, a little town. And sort of in my everyday life, I work in the legal profession as a legal assistant, sort of in the solicitors, sort of an office job, really. But yeah, the sort of main focus that I'm sort of doing at the moment is my social media and making sure that I can raise awareness on limb difference and a positive message and ending the stigma around sort of disability.
Maybe because I guess a lot of listeners don't yet know what your limb difference is or what your
or just in general what limb difference means. I personally did not know what it was before I heard your story, so I think it's Maybe something that if you could maybe describe it to people or tell people if it's a genetic disorder or what happens there.
Yeah, for sure. So I was born with a limb difference called Ectrodactyly, which is also known as split hand and foot. And in my case, what that meant was I was born with 2 toes on each foot and 1 finger on each hand. And as a baby, I sort of later went on to have surgery to transfer a toe from each of my feet onto my hand to make it able so I could pick things up and write, use a knife and fork, etc. So it is genetic. It wasn't sort of caused by an accident or having to have my fingers amputated or anything like that. I was born that way, and the doctors sort of said that it was to do with my genetics and a default in my DNA through pregnancy for my mum. So it wasn't sort of picked up on any of the pregnancy scans, or we wasn't already aware that I was going to be born this way. So it was a complete sort of surprise when I was born to my mum, and also to the doctors who had never really seen anything like this before. So it was a bit unknown really what had actually caused it. So there was quite a bit of investigations into that. But they did sort of say that it was genetic and it was something that sort of couldn't be avoided.
When did you have surgery, or what year?
Yeah, so I was born in 1996, and I had my first surgery when I was 2 years old in 1998. They sort of couldn't do it any earlier than that. I think you've got to be a certain age before they'll put you under surgery for that particular thing. So the waiting lists were really long as well. Professor Simon Kay, he actually did my surgeries. I think he's sort of famous for doing the first hand transplant. So yeah, Professor Simon Kay, he was the guy who performed the surgery on my hands and feet. And I sort of went on to have about 5 or 6 operations between the ages of 2 and 4. Wow. Because it wasn't sort of a simple one-time operation, if that makes sense. Obviously, they had to take the toe off my foot, which included taking the bones, the tendons, all the blood vessels with it, and obviously attaching it to my hand and making sure it worked and making sure it would move. So I think the surgeries lasted about 6 hours each. So it was quite intense for obviously a baby to go through. So they did it sort of over the course of quite a lot of operations. And on my right hand in particular, my thumb doesn't move because when they attached it to my hand, the tendons and things just didn't match up. So I had to have a lot of follow-up operations trying to correct that. But unfortunately, they couldn't sort of make it work. So yeah, on my right hand, my right thumb doesn't move at all. But I'm so grateful sort of that I did have to go through those surgeries because it's, improved my quality of life by a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I bet. Yeah. I mean,
that was fairly similar for you.
It's yeah. I mean, obviously I was 20 when it happened to and I only have it on my right hand, but the operation sounds basically identical to what happened to me. And yeah, I can totally relate the quality of life, just having 2 fingers, being able to pick things up and grab things, and it's immense. And I mean, yeah. So kudos for going through that in such a young age.
That was the thing, obviously, because I was 2 years old, I didn't have sort of any choice in it. It was something that my parents had to make the decision about, which I can imagine must have been the most incredibly hard decision to make, such a massive choice for this little baby. So I think they were given the option of to amputate my foot completely. So I would just sort of be left with nothing from my ankle down, or to go ahead with the toe-to-hand transplant. And they obviously went with the toe-to-hand transplant, which I'm very grateful for, as it's all sort of worked out well.
Something that I immediately wanted to ask you when I read your story and read some articles that you had been a part of was how it was different for you being a kid with limb difference versus being a teenager and now versus being an adult, because I would imagine I don't have any, I don't have limb difference. I have all of my fingers and my toes. And so as a kid, I didn't experience many besides the normal, like, oh, your boobs are not big enough yet and you're 15 but you know, kids are mean and teenagers are mean. And so I wanted to ask you what your experience was at different stages of your life and how that was not just for you different, but maybe from how you perceived what other people were thinking.
Yeah, so I think as a child, probably up until the age of 11, I wasn't too aware of the fact that I was different. Obviously, I knew that I had a difference on my hands and feet, but it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. I wasn't sort of constantly aware of it because I was sort of just treated the same at school. I was really lucky in that respect. I was never bullied. Nobody ever sort of singled me out or anything like that. And I sort of coped with things physically quite well because it was sort of something that I'd never known any different to. I just adapted and grown up that way. So whereas you might do something with 5 fingers, I just learned how to do it with 2. And that was just the way I was born. So for me, the physical aspect of things growing up was fine. I just sort of learned to do things my way. Also in terms of school and things, I had a really great experience and I loved school so much. It was sort of when I got to high school, which is sort of from the ages of 12 to 16, 17, is when it became quite an issue for me because that was when I sort of realised that I was different. And I think when you get to that age, there's a desire to be popular, there's a desire to be liked, and there's a desire to be the same as everybody else and fit in. And obviously at that point, I sort of started to realise that I was very different to other people physically, in terms of my hands and feet. And that's when I began to hide myself, to make sure people couldn't see my hands at any point. So I used to sort of cover them up with long sleeves. I even used to sit on my hands like in class, just to sort of avoid anyone possibly noticing the fact that I was different. So it was sort of in my teenage years that I really started to struggle mentally with who I was, and accepting myself. I had sort of no self-confidence. I would sort of go as far to say I really hated who I was physically. I would wish to be the same as my friends. I would sort of pray that one day I would just wake up and have 5 fingers and 5 toes, and it was something that was sort of on my mind constantly. Even if I wasn't aware that it was on my mind, it was always there at the forefront, just sort of telling me that yes, you are different, you're not as good as other people, people won't want to be your friend if they find out about your hands and feet. So yeah, I think I give myself a pretty tough time. It wasn't other people who bullied me or anything, it was sort of I was bullying myself in a way, if that makes sense.
One thing you said in an article, or I think you mentioned in an article, was that a lot of people told you that you're not going to be able to do certain things, and you proved them wrong, and I like that. For example, what did they say, or what was like a thing that they said that you could never do?
Yeah, so when I was born, the doctors sort of turned round to my mum just to prepare her and said, look, we don't think Shannon's ever going to be able to drive a car. We don't think she'll be able to wear a ring if she gets engaged or if she gets married. We don't think she'll probably be able to walk very well after these operations. And we don't think she'll be able to pick up a pen and write or sort of use a knife and fork independently, and that she will need a lot of care and a lot of assistance. And it was sort of straight after my operations. I think it was 6 days after my operations, I was already walking, which is incredible, to sort of prove them wrong in that aspect of things. But it was apparent as a child that I wasn't really going to struggle very much. I was very independent. If people offered me help, I was very reluctant to take it because I didn't want to be seen as somebody who needs assistance or somebody who needs help doing something. I wanted to do it myself. I wanted to prove that I am capable. Just because I've got 2 fingers does not mean I'm any less capable than someone else. So I went on to prove sort of people wrong. They said that I would struggle to swim because the surface area on my hands is obviously less than a person with 5 fingers. So they said I would struggle to sort of do the breaststroke swimming, which I went on and I learned to swim. I think it was at 8 years old. And I learned to drive. I got engaged and I wear a ring. So all these things, you know, that they said I wouldn't be able to do. I love art. I love getting creative. I love drawing. I love painting. And all them things require me to hold a pen or hold a paintbrush. And it's all things that I can do independently that I don't need assistance with. And it's great to just come out and show people. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something, because the only person who can truly hold you back is yourself. And if you start to believe them, then you'll never try and you'll never push yourself. But nothing is impossible, and there's always a way around things.
I love that.
Me too.
I love that. That especially that you are your own worst enemy when it comes in terms to like holding yourself back. But going back to the years where you struggled with yourself and how you looked, or
how you thought others
right.
saw you.
What was the turning point, or what was like the point where you said, okay, I'm embracing who I am?
I think I struggled all the way sort of up until recently, really. I'd say probably in the past 2 years when I've really started to feel confident in who I am. But up until then, even sort of going through the age of college and university, I really did struggle in thinking that I was attractive, or thinking that somebody would possibly want to be with me one day in a romantic way. And then I met my fiance when I was 17. And then, even though he said that he fancied me, he said that he found me attractive, etc., I just did not believe it, because I just thought, how could he possibly find me attractive? So even when somebody's saying it to you, I just couldn't believe it, because in my own mind I was saying that it was wrong. So I think the turning point for me was when I sort of got to the age of 21, 22. I just realised that life is so short, and I was just spending it hating who I was. I was spending my life looking in the mirror and wishing that I was somebody else, basically. And it was something that I couldn't change about myself. It's not like I hated my hair colour and I could just go buy, a box of peroxide and dye it blonde or something. It was something that I was going to have to live with for the rest of my life. And did I really want to spend the next 70 years looking in the mirror, hating who I am, and just living this miserable life of never truly accepting who I am? And it was at that point that I really realised that something needed to change, because it was no way to live. And it was like a switch flicked in my mind. Honestly, I know that sounds quite cliche, but that was honestly sort of what happened, is just a switch flicked, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. And it wasn't sort of something that happened overnight. It was something that I had to work on gradually, becoming more confident, so taking sort of baby steps and start making a start on the progress. So it wasn't something that just happened, but I think it was that conscious decision of, right, I know I need to make an effort to change, and that's when I started my Instagram.
That is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, first of all, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to just be open about it and go out into the world, and just show yourself who you are, and what makes you different, but also what makes you unique in a way. But what did it like? How is your mental health like? What did it do to you before you made the switch, and how is it improving, and how is it improving?
Yeah, mental health is something that I would say I have struggled with quite a lot growing up. I think it's sort of mainly been anxiety. I think because of my limb difference, there is a lot of anxiety attached to that. Constantly worried that people are going to dislike me, constantly worried that I'm going to get rejected, constantly worried and on edge that someone's going to look at me and make a comment, which is not, I really didn't experience that very much. It was all in my head that I thought it was going to happen, but there was no sort of evidence to back up my thoughts. It was all just in my mind. So yeah, it was something that I really struggled with, and at some points I genuinely believed I would never be able to get out of that mindset. And it was easy for me to break down. If I saw somebody just look at me in the street, I would instantly think that they thought I was abnormal, that I was like an alien, that it was something that they were looking at me because they thought I was disgusting, and I would literally start to cry. And when I look back at that now, I feel so sorry for that version of myself, because I wish I could go back and speak to her and say, look, everything is going to be okay. There is a way out of this, even though you can't see it right now. So sort of compared to back then, my mental health now is just sort of 90 times better, because obviously I still have days where, you have a rough day and you look in the mirror and you don't like who you are. But I think everybody has them days, regardless of if you've got a disability, if you've got a limb difference or anything like that. But now I'm so sort of positive in who I am. I'm very sort of self-assured. I've accepted my difference. And it's okay to be different. I just think I look at it from the point of view that if I saw somebody walking down the street who was different, who had a physical difference, I wouldn't think any less of that person, and I wouldn't think they were disgusting. So why do I think that about myself? And I think that's sort of the mind frame that you've got to get into, and sort of change everything, change them negative thoughts into positive ones, and try and rationalise them best you can. And I do appreciate that is a lot easier said than done, because trust me, I've been there, I've been in that place. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there is a way out of that sort of dark place.
Yeah, I agree. I think I am very fortunate to have kind of learned that lesson early on as a kid, because my mom lost her leg when she was 18, and she had a prosthetic leg. She didn't have one until I was about 7, I think. And we went to China when I was 13 for like a family trip for a month. And there were a lot of people who would look at her and stare while she was walking on the street with us. And she had a cane and she was walking with her prosthetic leg and shorts on. And the way that she carried herself and the way that she handled those situations was by she would sometimes go up to people when they pointed in China, for example, and would draw them a picture because she couldn't explain to them in their language what had happened. But she wanted to, instead of have them pointing and maybe wondering, she wanted to like kind of teach them something in that moment. And so she would literally draw them a picture of what happened, where she's acting out in kind of a silly way, like her getting hit, and then she would go like, "Wah!" and like scream and just try in every way to kind of theatrically show them what happened. And all of a sudden the whole atmosphere would change. And I think that seeing that as a kid, it was really inspiring, because it became then easier for me when I went through trauma to be open about it. So I could also hopefully reach out to other people who were maybe scared to come out with their story. And so I think it's really cool that especially that you were able to see, okay, how would I be if I were in their shoes? So if I saw somebody with a physical difference, I wouldn't judge them. I wouldn't laugh at them. I wouldn't point at them. I wouldn't think that there's something wrong with them, but rather I would just say, oh, there's a person walking down the street, or you don't really have to think twice about it. And I think that's really lovely that you came to that, and at such a young age.
Right. Also the aspect of hiding your hands or sitting on them or trying to not show them to people, I can totally relate. I used to wear a glove over my hand for, 5-6 years after my accident, because I was so insecure, and I was so, as you said, I was so in my mindset that people were staring at it, and people are like talking about it and making fun or thinking like I don't know, the weirdest things. And Danielle was like one of the major impacts in terms of letting go of those thoughts and just letting go of the glove that only made it worse in a lot of ways, because having a glove on in summertime makes people look.
Yeah.
And so when I let go of the glove, people didn't look anymore. So that was like a big part of having someone in my life that also encourages who I am and trying to make myself believe that I'm worthy of loving myself.
And also worthy of receiving love.
Right. So you met Alex in 2014, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How did that change your view of yourself?
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's sort of the turning point. You know, when I met Alex, we were just sort of at a friend's house. We'd not seen each other before, so he didn't know about my limb difference at all. And we got talking, and we sort of instantly clicked with each other. But I was so worried that as soon as he found out about my hands and feet, he wouldn't want to speak to me anymore. So again, I was making the conscious effort to hide my hands, hide my feet, so he wouldn't find out about it, so he'd still want to speak to me. And sort of, we met up a few times after meeting, and I again was still trying to hide my hands, trying to hide my feet. And I was getting myself so worked up because I was thinking, at some point I'm going to have to tell him about it, or at some point he's obviously going to find out. And I felt like I owed it to him to tell him about it. And it was really stressing me out. And it got to the point where I brought it up and he was like, oh yeah, I already know. And I was like, oh, because I didn't know that he'd already seen sort of my hands and feet, because he never once mentioned it. He never once brought it up in conversation. He never made a big deal about it or stared at the sort of my hands and feet. So I just presumed that he'd not seen them, because I would have thought that he would have at least said like something. And that sort of amazed me, the fact that he'd seen it and it had not fazed him and he wasn't bothered by it, and he just sort of brushed past it and carried on. And I think it was from that point I thought, oh wow, you know, I've met this incredible person who hasn't even seen it as an issue. And it's from that point that I started to realise, well, I am worthy of love, because this person's met me, this person's seen me physically, and he's not bothered by it. And he still chose to stick around. He's still chosen to carry on speaking to me. So I think it's sort of at that point I realised that everything I'd been telling myself previously, sort of through my teenage years, this was just proving it all wrong. And it was an incredible feeling.
And also the fact that he completely normalized it is, I think that's something that is missing in our society in general.
Yeah.
And I mean, with your Instagram, you're trying to exactly do that, and I love that, because seeing things in movies and in advertisements, it's basically, you see the perfect body, you see the perfect person. And if you see people who are different or people with limb difference, they're usually used to scare or try to, I don't know, they use them in like a really
kind of a negative way.
In a negative way, yeah. It's always either the weird person, or it's a spell, or it's just a really tragic thing, or, you know, it's not something that is being portrayed as normal. And so I think normalizing the whole situation and normalizing and also embracing people who are different, because we're all different, inside, outside, doesn't matter. I think that's something that is really important. And how do you think we can end that, and also end the shaming and, I don't know, trying to embrace people who are different and trying to embrace a society that is different, and I don't know, all the hatred and stuff that is brought towards that. How do you think we can stop that?
I think it's firstly probably very important to sort of encourage people who are different to show themselves and to not hide who they are. Sort of, for example, through Instagram, through other people sort of showing who they are and being confident in pictures and encouraging other people who are different to do the same. So then they feel more confident to put themselves out there as well. And also, representation in the media is so crucial to sort of normalize being different, because at the moment, like you say, there's this sort of, in the media, you see the perfect bodies, you see people who are seen as normal, so people like to call it. But I think, what is normal? You know, normal is nothing. Everyone has their own kind of normal. For me, 2 fingers is normal because that's what I was born with. And to me, 5 fingers isn't normal because that's not what I was born with. So everyone has a different sort of perception of normal, and every single person in the world is individual and unique. You know, we all have different hair colours. Some of us have birthmarks, some of us have beauty marks and freckles, etc. So everyone is different, but for some reason certain types of differences are seen as fine and other ones aren't. So I think it's important for the media to represent all types of differences, not just the ones that they choose to show. You know, skin colour differences like scars, limb differences, all sorts of differences. I think it's important to show because that is an accurate representation of society. And what we see through the media, in the films, in sort of magazines, advertisements, TV shows, it's just a small aspect of life that you're being shown. You're not, you know, getting the true diversity of society. And I think if there was more representation, it would then normalise being different. It would show to people watching that, you know, not everybody is the same, and it's very common to have people who are different to you, and that's completely fine. It's something that it's a fact of life. It's normal. It's okay to accept that and move on. So I think that is so important to portray difference in the media, and not just in a negative light. I know, like you said, there is a lot of negative portrayal of being different in the media. It is used to sort of enhance someone's evil character or make people seem vulnerable or someone who help, when in reality people are normal. Just because they've got a difference, it doesn't mean they're so vulnerable, or it doesn't mean they're an evil person. Just show them as being sort of an everyday character in a TV show, you know. So I think that would definitely help spread awareness and end the stigma attached to being different, is just seeing it out there in the content that we consume every day. And if you think of how many people watch Netflix, how many people are scrolling through their Instagrams, how many people are on Facebook consuming all the advertisements, if there was more diversity and all that, then it would just become normal and it would become part of life.
Absolutely. I think that's really important in all aspects of just being human, is that I agree with you that what is normal? There really is no definition of normal, because if everybody were under that category of normal, meaning everybody is the same, life would be so boring. And I'd feel like we wouldn't have real human connections with people if everybody were under that same category. So I think it's important to recognize that normal is technically not really even a concept that exists, and that it's more everybody is their own person, everybody has their own personality, everybody has different beliefs, different hair color, different skin color, different types of fingers, and their joints move differently. It's everything about us is different and unique. And I think that's what makes the human connection so special.
I agree. Imagine if there's someone out there struggling right now, or listening and feel like, okay, I want to love myself, but I can't find the courage, or I can't find the I don't know, the power, the will to do so, what would you tell them? Is there something you would tell them?
Yeah, sort of, I know for everybody, obviously, every single person's journey is different, and what might work for someone might not work for somebody else. But in my sort of case, I would say the things that really, really helped and sort of put me on the right path to self-love and sort of acceptance is when I started my Instagram. I mean, it doesn't have to be Instagram. It could be any social media platform that people decide to use. But it was just a simple search, and I searched for Ectrodactyly, which is the limb difference that I've got, which I'd never thought to do before. And when I searched it, the amount of pictures that came up was like, I was so shocked, if I'm honest, because I'd never really seen anybody who had a limb difference before. So I felt so isolated up until that point. And it was seeing other people's pictures of them sort of living their lives, not being afraid to hide their hands in front of the camera, being with loved ones, and just you could just see on their face how positive they were. That really encouraged me to do the same, because I thought, well, if they can do it and they've got the exact same hand as me, then there's no reason why I can't do it. And like I said before, it was a very gradual process. It wasn't something, I didn't just see that picture and everything, every negative sort of thought I'd ever had disappeared, because that wasn't the reality. And I think it's important to be real with people and say, look, it's not something that you can just do overnight. It's going to take time, and you've got to be willing to put the work in if you truly want to sort of have that self-love and be in a better mind frame. But I would say the most important thing is to probably fill your life with things that you want to see. I think we live in a society now where everyone consumes things on social media that they probably don't even want to, but they just follow people because other people are following them, or they think it's popular and that's what they like to do. But this is when I started my Instagram. I made sure that I followed positive accounts that sort of, posted positive quotes. I followed accounts that had limb differences. So that's what I was seeing on my feed, is just constant sort of media and content of people who were similar to me. So it became very normal to me to see that, rather than just seeing people with 5 fingers and 5 toes all the time. I was seeing people that looked like me sort of posting amazing pictures, which then encouraged me to do the same. Another thing I would say is positive sort of material that you can read. I know there's a lot of self-help books out there. There's a lot of self-help video content sort of on YouTube, podcasts, where people literally sit and talk about the power of being positive and the power of changing your mindset in a positive way. And one book that I would recommend is The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. I know a lot of people might have heard of that before, but it is definitely a book that changed my outlook on life. I would say before reading the book, I was quite a negative person mentally. I would always think, oh no, why has this happened to me? Why does all the negative stuff happen to me? And if something negative happened in the day, I would dwell on it. But after reading that book, it completely changed my outlook on things, and it really changed the way that I react to things in life. And that was sort of the start of my journey, and I would say that really, really did make a difference. So yeah, for anyone who's in sort of that bad mind frame at the moment, I would recommend sort of looking at some self-help books, and maybe starting with The Secret. I think it's a great sort of book to start with. And just looking on social media for people who are similar to you by using hashtags, and reach out to people. I mean, I always like to say my DMs are open. If anyone wants to drop me a message because they're struggling, please do. I would rather spend 10 minutes writing out a sort of message to someone to make them feel better or to help them than them to be sat there feeling down about themselves. So don't be afraid to reach out, because there is some great people out there on social media who want to make a positive difference. And And, even if it's not me, there is a lot of other people who I follow, and some great charities out there too who you can reach out to who do provide that support.
I totally agree with you. And I have said multiple times on this podcast how important I think it is, especially in the world that we live in and with all of the social media and all of the things that are out there, that on your personal social media, only follow accounts that make you feel good and that bring you positivity and that bring you joy. Because if you're constantly scrolling through your feed and you're seeing things that make you feel bad about yourself, then I feel like that's just one of the worst things you can do for your own self-image and your own confidence. And so I tell people all the time, the majority of my the people that I follow on Instagram are either some positive quotes, recipes, or dogs. That's essentially all I follow because it makes me feel good and it gives me a positive moment when I go into that kind of thing.
I've Googled limb difference, and it's interesting because I've never heard that term. I've never figured that there's a term for that, which is kind of stupid because why shouldn't there be? But I Googled it and your pictures came up and some articles and also a lot of backlash about a recent movie with Anne Hathaway, I think.
Witches, I think.
Witches, yeah. How did you because you're gaining this massive following right now, or a pretty big following right now, doing your awareness work on Instagram. How did you slither into the whole thing?
Yeah, so I think probably about 3 weeks ago, I had 1,000 followers. And since, the Witches film came out with Anne Hathaway, for those of you who don't know, who's listening, basically the main character was given a limb difference, which was ectrodactyly the same as mine, but it was being portrayed in an extremely negative way. It was sort of used to demonize her character. So the whole limb difference community came together to sort of raise awareness on why it was wrong. So I posted a video about it, and I just kept trying to post content about it, writing sort of articles about it, just to spread awareness and say, look, this is so wrong. This isn't how limb difference should be portrayed. And we were trying to sort of get the sort of attention of the Warner Brothers and Anne Hathaway, which thankfully they did sort of come out and give us an apology, which is great. But it was sort of from there that I got sort of 7,000 followers within the space of a few weeks, which was absolutely crazy and something that I never expected at all. But I genuinely believe that my followers have sort of come about because I think I'm quite spiritual. I believe in sort of manifestation and positive thinking and bringing things into your life. And I'm so passionate about spreading awareness on limb difference and wanting people to learn more and educate themselves and change their perceptions, etc., that I genuinely believe sort of I willed these people to my Instagram, if that makes sense. And I know for a lot of people that might sound a bit crazy or unrealistic, but I genuinely believe sort of how much I am passionate about this and how much I want to make a difference has really sort of brought these people to my Instagram. And I'm so, so grateful for every single person who has decided to click that follow button or even sort of interact with my post in any way, because that is the main reason why I sort of set out to do my Instagram, is to spread this message. But never once did I think sort of it would turn into all these followers. But I am so, I'm so grateful for it, and I appreciate sort of every single person who wants to learn more and who is reading the content.
I think that's great. And I love how many people have been inspired by you, because I'm sure that there are thousands of people who have been inspired by you and other people who have spoken out. And I think, knowledge is power, as cheesy as that is, but it totally is. And the more you know, the more aware you are, and I think also the more sympathetic and empathetic we become with knowledge. And so I think it's great that it's becoming more aware to people that there are other differences out there, and there are physical differences, but that doesn't make you anything other than human.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, how you portray yourself on your Instagram and how you interact with people and how open you are. I mean, that's contagious. That's people. You can pretty quickly see fake people on Instagram and real people, and real people are not, at least the majority is not so real, or at least that's how it used to be. I think it's becoming more that way, where Instagram or people from Instagram trying to be more real about their life. But the big majority, or at least the bigger accounts, are kind of fake people who portray a fake life, or at least a pretentious life, in the sense that it's only positive, it's only good, it's only about wealth, good looks, and all that stuff. But I love to see more people gaining traction and gaining followers that are just posting real stuff, real struggles, and just being open about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, it's quite easy to get lost in Instagram and social media in general, of all these people who look perfect, who have the perfect lives, who, have puppy dogs and live in these amazing homes. But, they only show the aspect of the life that they choose to. You've got to remember that on social media, people post pictures that they choose to post. So, it's filtered, and it's just one still image of their day. So I think it is so important to remember that, because I've been guilty of it myself when I've been scrolling through Instagram. When you see these famous people who have millions of followers, and they just look perfect. The hair's amazing, they've got the perfect tan, they've got the toned body, and you just feel rubbish about yourself. But you've got to remember that Photoshop is real as well. And a lot of people do use things like that. It is true. But that is my aim completely, is to just be as real as possible. And, if I'm having a bad day, if I'm struggling mentally, it's okay to say that on Instagram, because you can't paint this perfect picture, because that's, giving people unrealistic expectations. And I think if you are real with people, if you're very honest, if you're very raw, it helps people, and it also, gives them a bit more respect for you, because you're not just trying to post the good parts of your life.
Especially, I think especially in these days where human interaction is, like in real life, is so rare. People look for more real people on Instagram and social media in general, at least from my perception, because all those celebrities or big shots on Instagram can't. What are they doing right now? They can't travel. They can't do their parties, whatever. And so it's kind of toning down, or at least that's how it seems. And so I don't know, people are trying to look for more real content out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I do think it's sort of becoming more popular to follow someone who is very openly honest, rather than someone who just sort of lives two different lives, one on Instagram and one in real life.
Where can people find you on Instagram?
Yeah, so on Instagram, you can find me at Crossland Shannon. So it's just my name, but backwards. And it's sort of just Instagram that I've got at the moment. So, I'm not on sort of Twitter or Facebook. I do sort of focus my limb difference awareness solely on Instagram. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Feel free to come check me out and say hello.
And we will link the book you mentioned and the charities down in the description of the podcast. So if anyone is interested in looking those up, please feel free to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think we don't want to keep you longer. We really appreciate you taking time and talking to you and being open about it.
And it's very lovely to talk to you. It's you have this very lovely and kind of enlightening energy about you that just brings kind of a really positive light. So it's very nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much. It's been great to speak to you both.
We would love to talk to you again at some point if you're willing to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been so fun speaking to you guys. You're both so lovely. It sort of just felt so natural speaking to you both. Thank you so much for asking me to come on as well. Can't believe that you want me on your podcast. But no, it's been great. Thank you. Obviously,
we are honored. We are honored to have you on, to have such a lovely, positive person on, and just talk openly about their lives.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got obviously any other questions at all, I can think of anything afterwards. And like I say, if you want to do another podcast at some point in the future about anything, then yeah, of course, just get in contact with me. I'd love to do that.
We will
do that.
I wish you the best of day. And yeah, I hope we talk to each other soon, and we'll stay in contact.
And try not to go crazy in this pandemic that we're all going crazy in.
Right.
Yes. Yes, you too. Stay safe as well. Obviously, Christmas is coming up, so I hope you both have an amazing holiday. Just stay safe, and we'll definitely keep in contact. And I look forward to hearing from you both.
Thank you. Have a happy holiday, and
we'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speak to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
So thank you again to Shannon for joining us for the last hour. It was so lovely talking to her. And like we said before, if anyone is interested in reaching out to her, you can find her on Instagram, which we will link in the description, as well as the book that she recommended. We will also link that in the description.
Right. Yeah, thanks again, Shannon. And please share the podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast. And on Apple Podcasts, you can rate it, please. It helps us a lot. And other than that, I think that's it.
That's it.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.